Okay, ladies and gentlemen, another story since I'm here in Tunnel Springs and the scenery is so killer. I'll tell a third story as I'm walking back to the car. But anyways, this is about when we moved out to Ohio, Columbus, Ohio area to work for Honda. And it's interesting. Having a Japanese wife, I've come to find out how important food is to their lifestyle, and how it's like every great thought is put into every meal, almost, it seems, and great trouble is, and it's like, you want me to eat a sandwich on the run while I'm going to work and not sit down and have a quiet, restful meal? Heavens, that's unthinkable. Or eat by myself? No, heavens no. So anyways, not far into our marriage, we had the opportunity to move to Columbus, Ohio to work for Honda of America manufacturing, in Marysville, and lived in Dublin on the outskirts of Columbus. But it was my coworkers. It was interesting just see firsthand the different outlook on food, the different importance placed on that food. And I'm going to tell a little story about that here in just a second, if I can figure out how to get out of here. Okay. Well, all right, well, I guess I take a left here. Or maybe not. Maybe I'll go up this right here. And let me do a 360. Let's just see what I'm looking at. Anyways, so when people at work in Ohio, this is just my experience. I'm not saying everyone's like this there, but it's funny. When talking about a restaurant, or whether it's a good restaurant or a bad restaurant, the measure of that seemed to be how big of a doggy bag you would take home after having that, steak dinner or whatever. If it was 1 pound, 2 pounds, 3 pounds, that was the judgment. That's all you needed to know if trying to decide on a restaurant. Is this a good restaurant or a bad restaurant? The doggy bag size. Oh wow, it made me chuckle. But anyways, I had a coworker, and he's passed away since, and so I can maybe mention it. I'll mention his first name, but big, nice, gentle giant named Chuck. He was probably 6'6", played every sport known to man. He was big into basketball, of course, being that big man. And okay, where am I going? And I remember him. He was, no surprise here, but he was diagnosed with diabetes at some point along the way, right? And then he would come into work about once a month and give us an update on how many toes he has had lopped off because they were dying because of this diabetes, right? Don't change your diet or alter your lifestyle. Just keep chopping away those toes. And he said, I had my Big toe lopped off today. Okay, come in like a month later. I had my pinky lopped off today. And I think when I left the company in 2005, it had several toes missing by that time, right? And no surprise to me, I don't know a lot of the details, but after I left the company, I got word of his passing. Not too long after. And so, yeah, wow. So the moral of the story is, when choosing a restaurant, don't let the size of the doggy bag be the deciding factor on whether you eat at a restaurant or not. And maybe if you've got diabetes, make some changes before it's too late. I'm no expert, but I've heard so many stories about how so many illnesses can be reversed with lifestyle changes. In Japanese, they call it shukanbyo. Shukan is lifestyle, habitual illness that comes about from your habits causing. And I would say that most of the diseases that modern man is dying of are what we would put into the category of shukanbyo, or these lifestyle habits are killing us. And so, since my 2 strokes, I've made some drastic changes, and I can tell you, it's not that difficult. I mean, at the age of 60, don't you think you've had enough Diet Cokes? Don't you think you've had enough Diet Dr. Peppers or full on strength Cokes, or whatever, the Mexican Coke with the delicious sugar cane sugar? You think you've had enough of those? I think I could probably count those into the thousands. And you start knocking those out of your diet, and your blood work starts to show the progress. And that has been my case with my, blood sugar, my cholesterol, my blood pressure, my triglycerides, my, all the indicators are coming into the normal range, and based mainly on diet. So when Mark Hyman, my favorite doctor online, and RFK Jr. are talking about, eating your way to what's the word food is your medicine. Food should be your medicine. There's no side effects from food. I mean, they don't have the side effects of medications, and I'm telling you, there's I've said this before, but I just had a brother-in-law die, and he had a good run. He comes with genes of longevity. He's in his mid-80s, and he had a good run. I mean, but I would say from the last decade or so, close to that, maybe a little bit shorter than that, his he was not very he was kind of miserable. Of course, especially after my sister passed away from Alzheimer's. But, oh my heavens. And then he would talk about how he was ready to go and he wants to go be with his bride. And yet, he's taking a laundry list of medications that I think are causing about 80% of what he's miserable about. He can hardly move. He's got the tremors. He can shake. It's like this. You know, it doesn't have to be this way. So I encourage us all to, yeah, you know, once you get into your, you know, enjoy. Okay, 60. All right. Yeah. At about 60, it's good to start making some lifestyle changes. You don't need that all those big fat cheeseburgers. And I went to after my first stroke, I had an appointment with a neurologist to go talk about, you know, my medications and blah blah blah. And she was all about, this is something you don't want to hear from your neurologist. You want to still eat those cheeseburgers and bacon and all things like that, don't you? You don't want to have to change your lifestyle, right? Then you better get on this blood pressure medication. I can't remember what she was pushing at that time, but I thought, oh wow, that's not something I want to hear from my neurologist. You want to keep eating those greasy hamburgers, right? You don't want to have to make any changes, do you? Okay. And I'll just say one more thing. It made me think, compare my training with Delta Airlines. I was in training, 6 weeks of training, to that of a doctor. You know, 8 years of training or whatever. I don't know how much. I've heard that they get maybe a class, one class or one afternoon about nutrition, and everything else about, you know what the latest medications can do. Something like that. It was like at Delta Airlines. We were there for 6 weeks, and on like week 5, I don't think we'd ever had any discussion about customer service. And I thought to myself, at some point, are we going to talk about customer service? We did. Ended up having like an afternoon of customer service. The rest of the 6 weeks was about safety, and that's important. And as you know, we've not that there's usually a doctor on board every plane you're on, or an EMT or something you can call for their help, but not always. But there's a medical kit on board that if there's not a medical professional, I guess we're on the hook to try to use it. I never had that experience, but we, with the help of a retired doctor, we brought this woman back to life 2 times on an airplane from, I think it was Japan to LA. And oh my heavens, I think on another video I talk about the details of that, but to my surprise, the call light now is ringing the 3rd time, right as we were making our final approach into Los Angeles. And after this woman had almost died twice, you know what the 3rd call light was? Ding dong, we're approaching Los Angeles right now. And she said, oh, are we going to make our connection in Los Angeles? That's what her concern was after being brought back to life twice by us. I'm not going to make my connection. And unfortunately, I told her, I said, in cases like this, I'm sorry, you're going to be met by EMTs and an ambulance and going to be rushed to the hospital to be looked over. So I wouldn't count on making your connection. But it's interesting how how soon people forget their plight. Oh, then they get back to the cares of the world, you know. I'm not going to be 5 minutes late for my, you know, I don't know. So strange. Humans are funny that way. Anyways, thank you for listening, and I'm going to sign off. Bye-bye.